Madam Speaker, the date was April the 16th, 1966. The pilot was Sam Johnson, United States Air Force. He was a colonel, and he was doing his second tour of duty in Vietnam. He was flying with a fighter squadron called Satan's Angels. He was a career pilot who had already flown 62 combat missions during the Korean War, flying an F-86 Sabre jet. Colonel Johnson also flew with the famed Air Force Thunderbirds. But on that day, April the 16th, 1966, Colonel Johnson and his F-4 was shot down by ground fire by the North Vietnamese. He was captured. He was put in a prisoner of war camp, and Madam Speaker, he was in that POW camp for 7 years. Because of the way that he would not give in to the torture and to the interrogation, the enemy moved him to the famous Hanoi Hilton, a place they called Alcatraz. It was as bad a POW camp that ever existed in history. Alcatraz was where 11 POWs were put because they were the most obstinate men, and they were leaders of other POWs. They were hard-nosed, and they had to be segregated. They called themselves the Alcatraz Gang. They were defiant, and the North Vietnamese called this man right here, Colonel Sam Johnson, Die Hard. They tortured him, but they got no information from him. During that time, that 7 years, he was beaten and tortured. Sam Johnson never broke down. He was so obstinate that they finally decided to put him in solitary confinement, where he remained for 4 years in a cell that was 3 foot wide by 9 feet. All that was in that cell was a light bulb above his head that the enemy kept on for 24 hours a day. During the nighttime, they put Sam Johnson in leg irons, and during that 4 years, he never saw or talked to another American. While in that POW camp, he and other POWs communicated with each other with a code by tapping on the wall. And during that time, he memorized the names of the other 374 POWs in captivity. He kept that memory going so that when he got away or was released or escaped, he would be able to tell their loved ones who they were and where they were. It was brutal, it was harsh, it was cruel, it was mean. The enemy laughed and made fun of Colonel Sam, and all he ever said was, "Is that the best you can do?" For food, he ate weeds and pig fat and rice. He went from 200 pounds to 120 pounds. And after 7 years of confinement, on February the 12th, 1973, 39 years ago this week, Colonel Sam Johnson was finally released. After his release, Colonel Johnson continued to serve in the United States Air Force for a total of 29 years. And while he was in that POW camp back home in Texas, his wife Shirley knew he was shot down, but she didn't know what happened to him for 2 years, whether he was alive, dead, or missing in action. After he left the United States Air Force, he served in the State House in Texas. He had his own business, and then in 1991, he came to the House of Representatives, where he continues to serve with distinction and represents the folks from Texas. Sam Johnson returned to America with honor. He was a special breed. He was the American breed. He is that special warrior in that time. He was a captive warrior that never forsook his duty and never forsook his honor. Colonel Sam and other Vietnam veterans were not only treated badly in Vietnam, but many that returned were treated poorly by America. These vets had no welcome home parades. They were cursed. They were spit upon. America did not really appreciate those old war horses from Vietnam. So to Colonel Sam and all that served in Vietnam, welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. Some served in return, some served and did not return, some served with the wounds of war. So to Colonel Sam Johnson, we appreciate your service, because the worst casualty of war is to be forgotten, and that's just the way it is. I yield back.